What's good, y'all? It's BADRUDDIN, and welcome to part 2 of BADRUDDIN'S Guide to College Apps. So part 1 was all about the college application timeline, so when you should do what and stuff. This one is going to be all about the college list, so certain factors you should keep in mind when choosing what colleges to apply to. Also, the different types of colleges out there, and certain pre-medical specific advice as well. So that's pretty much what this video is going to be about. Alright, let's get into it. So the first thing I gotta do before I start is give a big disclaimer. With my previous video, is pretty much fact-based, like this is the deadline, this is what you should be doing beforehand, this is what you should be doing after. Nothing to disclaim there. But for this one, it's going to be a lot more of my own personal advice, and some things might be controversial, so I just want to give a big disclaimer. First of all, I'm not a college student yet, or I am a college student, like I've gotten into college, but I haven't actually gone to college yet. Like I start college on August 23rd, and that's like over a month from today, or when this video is being uploaded. And I'm not a medical student either, so all the pre-medical advice I give, I can't guarantee it's going to work or not, or choosing a certain college is going to give you a certain advantage or not. Just take this whole video, the way I want to approach this is as if it's one big Reddit or college confidential post. So I applied to 55 colleges this cycle, and seeing that this is a college list video, the first piece of advice I want to give is don't apply to 55 colleges. That's way too many for anyone. But with the fact that I did apply to 55 colleges, I've done a lot of research. I've looked into a lot of the colleges that I applied to, and I've gained a lot of information. And I just want to share all this information on this video. And the last thing I want to say is that I'm just one person, so all the information I say in this video is just coming from one person. Don't take it too much to heart. Don't get triggered. Just take this as if it's information and make your own inferences and decisions about it, and make the decisions that are best for you. Honestly, the disclaimers are a waste of time, but I gotta do it because I gotta do it. But it should be pretty common. Literally anything you see on the internet is just a piece of information. You do what you want with it. So anyway, that's that. Alright, now let's get into the actual video. I'm going to start off with some general factors. So this isn't pre-med specific or anything. It's just for anyone applying to college. These are 3 things that you should keep in mind. The first one is being cost. Cost, usually it's on 2 extremes. Either people give way too much thought into it and leave some really good fitting colleges on the table, or they don't care at all and they apply to a bunch of colleges that are way out of their financial reach, and then it's just wasted applications, a waste of time. So obviously the best approach to take is down the middle. When it comes to choosing the best financially fit college for you, there's 3 things you need to look out for. First one is scholarships. So scholarships are tricky, all right? So there's external full tuition scholarships. Those are the first deadlines that usually pop up. Things like Cameron Impact or Koch Scholars, or I think there's one called Hispanic something Scholar. These are all external, not affiliated with any college, full tuition or like really big or really prestigious scholarships. Jackie Robinson is one of them. So all these scholarships, you have to be a good fit for these scholarships to apply. So that means having really good stats and really good extracurriculars. And it's going to be a personal decision. So whoever you're working on your college applications with, you need to ask them to see if you'd be a good fit for it. Now, obviously, the person I always recommend is Nidhi Bhaskar. Put her information up there. I've advertised and talked about her a lot in other videos, so go check those out. I'm trying to keep the advertising a little bit to a minimum on this video, since there's a lot of information to get through. Alright, so that's first thing. Scholarships, external scholarships. Now, internal scholarships, so these are things that are affiliated with certain schools. There's full ride scholarships that a lot of schools offer, like Boston University has their trustee scholarship. UVA, University of Virginia, has something called Thomas Jefferson Scholars Program. Wash U has like 3 full tuition scholars program. USC, the school that I'm going to, has a bunch of full tuition and half tuition scholars programs. And all these deadlines are usually earlier. Some of them might be at the same time as the regular decision, but usually they're much earlier than the regular decision or whatever decision deadline that you usually apply to. So same thing with this, you have to be a good fit for these scholarships. So once again, personal decision. Now, what I'm trying to get at by saying this is that don't bank on your cost being covered by scholarships unless you are a stellar applicant, and you should most likely know that. And even if you don't, ask the person that you're working on your college applications with. Other than that, don't worry too much about the scholarships. Usually, as far as I found, among the colleges that are within the same tier, usually like reach and targets, your financial aid is going to be practically the same. The amount of need-based aid you get is probably going to be about the same. The best way to check this is with net price calculators. Net price calculators, every single college has them on their website. Just go ahead, put in all your financial information, and it'll give you a net price estimate. Usually this estimate is around plus or minus 10K, which is a big range, I know, but unfortunately they're not really accurate. So maybe plus or minus 10K, somewhere around there. And talk to your family, whoever's paying for your college, to see if this is financially feasible for you. And that's my second and a half piece of advice, is start talking to your family early on, or whoever's paying for college, about what is financially feasible for you. And also realize that like sometimes whoever's paying for your college might extend or contract their financial contribution depending upon the prestige of a college or how good of a college it is. So obviously talk through that, really initiate these conversations and keep these conversations going throughout the whole college application process, because you don't want to end up at the end of your college application process with a bunch of options but then not being able to pay for some of them and wasting your time on them. So just talk to your parents or whoever's paying for your college early on, and that'll set you up for success later on. And the last piece of advice when it comes to cost is cost of living. This is something that a lot of people don't consider at all. Rule of thumb, New York and LA, two of the most expensive cities to live in. I'm fortunately, so I'm going to school in LA, I'm going to USC, but I'm going to be a commuter student because I didn't grow up here. Well, I spent the last 7 years of my life here, so I live in LA. So the thing is, I'm lucky in the fact that I pay much less for a private school than most people would. But definitely, if you're coming in from out of state to LA or to New York, then check out the schools, check out the financial aid that's offered. Usually, as far as I've heard, NYU, which is like the big school in New York, other than like Columbia and stuff, doesn't really have that good of financial aid, as far as I've heard anyway. Once again, back to that disclaimer thing, go watch it again if you are getting triggered or something. But when it comes to NYU, I've heard the financial aid isn't as good and you don't get much money. USC, on the other hand, does give pretty good financial aid. It's not amazing or anything, but it's substantial. It's going to be on par with other private universities. So LA, New York, consider your cost of living if you're applying to schools there. Alright, now let's get into some of the more pre-med specific things to look out for when you're choosing what colleges to apply to and stuff, if you're intending to be pre-med or planning on it or thinking about it and stuff. So let's get into it. So I've divided this into 3 categories. The first is GPA deflation, second is pre-med opportunities, and lastly is public versus private. Okay, GPA deflation. Strap in because I got a lot to talk about. So the first thing is, let's define GPA deflation. GPA deflation, long story short, is just how hard it is to get an A at a school. And the first thing I want to say is it's really, 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 really hard to quantify this. There's no hard data that you can look at to say if a school is GPA deflated or not. And when it comes to saying that, the next thing is that GPA deflation is on a spectrum. So some schools are going to be more GPA deflated than others. So there's no way to say that like, oh, this school has GPA deflation or this school doesn't. Some examples of GPA deflation or schools that are pretty famous or infamous, I guess, for GPA deflation are things like UC Berkeley or Boston University or Swarthmore College, because it's really, really, really hard to get an A at some of these schools. Some of these schools have rules where only 20% of students in a class can get an A, even if like everyone scored 90 or higher. I don't know how accurate this is or not, but it's just stuff that I read. Once again, if you're getting triggered at this point or at any point in this video, go check out that disclaimer again so we can get everyone back on track. But anyway, let's keep going. GPA deflation, there's no way, like I said, to quantify it. The only way you can kind of see if a school has GPA deflation or not, or the way that I found, is just type in the name of the school, so say Harvard University, and then put GPA deflation after that, and search it up on Google, and just kind of feel out the vibe of the school, feel out like what people are saying on the internet, read through all the Reddit threads, the College Confidential threads. Quora is actually a really good source. It's sometimes more accurate than Reddit or College Confidential, and just feel out the vibe of the school. Honestly, there's no like easy way to say how GPA deflated a school is. You just have to kind of feel out the vibe, see what the general consensus is, and just take it from there and make that decision on your own. The next thing I want to talk about is pre-med opportunities. So I've divided pre-med opportunities into 3 more categories. So there's research, clinical, and service. So let's start off with research. With research, there's 2 different types of like research environments at certain colleges. There's one where there's super high level research going on, but there may be a lot of people involved in it, a lot of postdocs, a lot of graduate students, and even a lot of undergraduate students. So you might not have as much time with the PI or principal investigator, versus maybe going to a college that has some lower level research, but they have less people in the lab. So you're able to see the PI more, you're able to ask them for independent projects or publications, and maybe get letters of recommendation when you're applying to medical school and stuff. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at the research opportunities. For everything that I talk about, pre-med opportunities, GPA deflation, all this stuff, obviously research every single school, use Google, use the Reddit stuff, but also use the college website for this. Second of all is clinical opportunities. Once again, clinical opportunities, a lot of them are going to be listed on the college website, so go check that out. But a really easy way to see how many clinical opportunities you'll have access to is kind of to see how many hospitals are in the area, so you can see how many opportunities or how many places you'll have opportunities to volunteer and stuff out. So one really good example of this is Case Western Reserve University, where they have like 4 hospitals in the area. So things like that, you can kind of see like how many opportunities you'll have to apply to and stuff. And lastly is service, so community service, things like that. Honestly, this isn't something you have to stress too much about. Literally every single college you go to in America will have some sort of community service. But if there's something specific you want to do, then definitely research the school, research the surrounding nonprofits or NGOs and stuff, and see what you're into. Okay, so that's all about pre-med opportunities. Lastly, this is last but definitely not least, this is probably the most important thing, is public versus private. Okay, let's start off with my conclusion first. The conclusion that I found throughout all my research is that private is usually better than public when it comes to pre-med. Private is better than public usually like 99% of the time, and here are the reasons why. First of all, GPA deflation. So there's this theory, okay? And this isn't my theory. You're getting triggered now. Once again, just go to the disclaimer again. But there's this theory that the way college rankings work, like US News and World Report rankings, is for private universities, the way they drive up their rankings is by putting a lot of money, doing a lot of fundraising, getting a lot of money into their school and stuff to show that like they have lots of opportunities and stuff. With public schools, they're government funded, right? So they don't have like fundraising opportunities, or they can't like pull in a lot of money all the time. So what they got to do instead is make themselves look academically rigorous. So the way they do that is by making it harder to get an A. So the harder it is to get an A, the more academically rigorous the school is. So that's kind of how it works. That's why public universities are usually more GPA deflated than private universities. Obviously, there's exceptions to that rule. Now, like I said, with GPA deflation, you just kind of have to research it. But that's private versus public GPA deflation. Second of all, when it comes to class sizes, public universities in general have larger class sizes than private universities, and pretty much every single person I've ever talked to always says that it's nicer to have smaller class sizes when you're pre-med, because then you get to know your professor better and there's less people in the class, less competition, and it's easier to get a lot of recommendation, things like that. So obviously private universities will usually have smaller class sizes, so that's always nicer. And that also means that advising, each advisor, pre-med advisor, will have less people to deal with, and they'll be able to give more attention to you. So going to like a public school in California, so say, these are just some of the stories that I've heard. Once again, go back to a disclaimer, but I've heard that UCLA, at UCLA, it's sometimes really hard to get in a pre-med advising appointment because there's so many students assigned to one pre-med advisor versus going to like a private school where there's fewer students assigned to a pre-med advisor. But that's just something to think about. And last but not least, this is the first thing I talked about, and it's going to be the last thing I talk about in this section, is cost. So this is where private universities kind of seem worse or are worse in the fact that they're more expensive. Obviously, out-of-state public university and private university is going to be pretty much equal. So if you're going for an out-of-state public university, don't just go to a private university, because the tuition is going to cost about the same and sometimes even more. But if you're in-state, then it's worth taking a look at to see financially where you're at, and it might be more financially feasible for your family to pay in-state tuition than going to a private school and paying a lot more money. One option that I feel like a lot of students don't consider, and that one that I didn't even consider at first, is commuting. If the school is really close to your house, like USC is to me, then I saved a lot of money by commuting. I'm paying the same as in-state tuition, but going to a private university. So something to think about. So there's 3 main types of deadlines when applying to college. There's early decision, or some schools might not have early decision, but they might have single choice or restrictive early action. So this is the first type I want to talk about. Early decision and SCEA or REA. They're both very, very similar. The only difference is that with early decision, you apply to one college. You're allowed to apply to other colleges early action or even regular decision, just not SCEA or REA while you're applying ED or early decision. But if you get into your ED school, it's binding, so you have to go there. Versus with SCEA, you can apply SCEA or REA to a certain school, but that means that you can't apply early action to any private schools. You can still apply to early action to public schools. So let me give you a little example. So say you early decision to, I don't know, school that has early decision, Northwestern. Say you early decision to Northwestern, you can still early action to schools like, say, Tulane or Case Western, and you can also regular decision to schools like UCLA or things like that. So you can do that. That's where early decision. But if you get into Northwestern, you have to go to Northwestern. That's binding. With SCEA or REA, so say you apply, most of these schools that have SCEA or REA are usually like really, really top-notch schools where they don't have to do early decision, because if people get in, they're like 99% sure that they're going to go. So these are schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. So say you SCEA to Stanford, that means you can't early action to things like Tulane or Case Western, but you can early action to public schools like UMich or UNC Chapel Hill, things like that. And you can also regular decision to places like UCLA or things like that. Alright, so that's pretty much a breakdown of the more binding or early things. Now, a little note about early decision. I highly recommend that if you know you definitely want to get into a top tier school, that you early decision. Unless like you're a stellar applicant that is applying to like the full tuition scholarships that I talked about, it's really hard, especially with what happened this whole college application cycle, to get into a really top tier college without early decisioning. It's so competitive, and if you want to get into a top tier college, I would highly recommend early decisioning. When it comes to cost, that is something to take into consideration, but like I said, if you do the net price calculator and you're probably gonna, if you can pay plus or minus 10K, then you should definitely do it, and talk to your parents or whoever's paying for college about this too. Make sure they understand the gravity of the college application process when you're making a decision. But please early decision if you can, and I would highly recommend it. Trust me, it's going to be super hard to get into a really good college, just regular or a really competitive college, just regular decisioning. Next is early action. So this is pretty easy. You submit your application early, and then you get your decision earlier on. I would highly recommend you do a couple colleges early action just to have maybe a few acceptances in the bag before you go into your regular decision application process, which is the next application type, which is regular decision. Pretty standard. You apply in January, you get your decision sometime in April, March, and then you commit by May. If you want to know more about the decision types and stuff, go check out my timeline video. I'll link it in the description. Okay, so this is the point in the video where most college YouTubers or people who talk about college on YouTube, like advisors and stuff, will stop. Like, this will be the end of the video. They'll tell you like, comment, subscribe, and that's it. And I appreciate it. Like, I watched a lot of those videos, don't get me wrong, and I really appreciated all the advice they had to give me. But the thing that was unhelpful for me was the fact that I couldn't really connect those factors to certain colleges or understand like what colleges had those factors and stuff. And yes, like people should do research on their own, and I definitely think that y'all should do research on your own. But I made this thing that might help you all out. Now, don't go in the description and don't fast forward because it's not in this video right now. I'm gonna release it with next week's video on my essays, because I want y'all to watch this first. So I made a list of the best colleges of what I think are the best colleges for pre-med. So I took the top 50 US News and World Report, national universities, and liberal arts colleges and ranked them in what I thought are the best for pre-med. Some stuff I want to say. I'm going to lean in for this, okay? So some things I want to say before I give you all the list next week. I made this list with only pre-med factors. So only GPA deflation, only pre-med opportunities, and only private versus public. So what that means is I've ranked GPA deflation 1 through 5. So 1 being low GPA deflation, that's good. 5 being high GPA deflation. And then pre-med opportunities with the opposite version of the scale. So 1 being low pre-med opportunities, and then 5 being high pre-med opportunities. And I obviously ranked private schools a lot lower than public schools because of GPA deflation and things like that. But obviously, like I said, if cost is an issue for you, then make that decision for yourself. Now, the thing I want to say is that even though I ranked these like 1 to whatever number I ranked, I forgot, there's a lot of nuance in between certain colleges. So I also tiered them. I also grouped them together into certain tiers. So obviously with these colleges can be interchangeable within tiers. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it. There's a lot of small different things that, and even my own personal biases, like I said, like I prefer small towns. So I try not to make that be a big bias in my thing, but I may have made it like, it might have creeped up in there. Like, I'm sorry if it did, but that's why I kind of tiered them as well. And the last thing I want to say is that this is just a starting point. Once I release this next week, don't go and just pick the top ones, or like just pick the ones that you feel you'll be competitive at, one through like however many colleges you're applying to. Really research into the schools. If you see a school that interests you, research into it. Really go to the website, see what's in it, because when you write your supplementals, you're not going to be able to just say, oh, I saw this on this list that this random guy on YouTube made, and that's why I'm applying to this college. You're going to need specific facts and things. So that's all I want to say about it. I'm going to release in next week's video. It's going to be called BADRUDDIN'S Best Colleges for Pre-Med. I hope it's really helpful for you all. Make sure it's just a starting point. If you're a college student, don't even look at it. Like, I don't need any college students getting triggered at this. So if you're a college student, this literally has no benefit or value to you. So this is only for high school seniors that are applying to college. It's a good starting point for y'all. It's a way to see like what one person, me, thinks and has what one person's research. Obviously, some of these colleges I didn't research at all. So if I didn't apply to the college, then I probably didn't give my best ranking for it. So just one person, I may or may not, I might try to work with some other people to make it better and see if some other colleges they applied to. But for now, this is what I did. So that's all I can say about it. It's going to be a starting point. I'm going to release it next week on next Monday at 8 a.m. So definitely look out for my next video on essays. So it'll be in the link in the description of that video. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. I'll see y'all later.